The Strength in Softness, Redefining Power Through Vulnerability. Have you ever noticed how we celebrate people who push through pain? We admire those who never ask for help, who soldier on despite overwhelming odds. We've created entire mythologies around the lone hero who carries the weight of the world on their shoulders. But what if that's all wrong? I recently had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Jessica Short, a visionary whose work with the soft girl era movement is revolutionizing how we think about strength, particularly for Black women. Jessica isn't just creating content, she's igniting a cultural revolution that challenges centuries of conditioning around what power truly means. Her insights reveal something profound. What if our greatest power isn't in our ability to endure alone, but in our courage to be vulnerable together? This question isn't just philosophical, it's transformational. When Jessica speaks about vulnerability as a superpower, she's not talking about weakness disguised as strength. She's talking about authentic power that comes from embracing your whole self, imperfections and all. The kind of power that doesn't deplete you, but sustains you. The kind that doesn't isolate you, but connects you to others. Let me share something that might sound counterintuitive. The strongest people I've ever met aren't those who never fall. They're the ones who fall, acknowledge it, reach out for help, and rise again, together with others. Consider Jenica, a high achieving Black woman professional whose story Jessica shared with me. For years, Jenica embodied the strong Black woman archetype perfectly. She led teams flawlessly, mentored others tirelessly, and never ever showed a crack in her armor. She was admired, respected, and slowly dying inside. The weight of perfection was crushing her. The isolation of seeming invulnerable was suffocating her. The expectation that she could and should handle everything alone was burning her out. I think many of us know that feeling, don't we? That pressure to maintain the facade that everything is fine when you're actually drowning. Then something remarkable happened. During a leadership meeting, when asked about her biggest professional challenge, Jenica did the unthinkable. She told the truth. She spoke about her exhaustion, her fear of failure, her struggle to maintain the perfect image everyone expected of her. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, her colleagues began to share their own struggles. What Jenica thought would be career suicide became a catalyst for transformation, not just for her, but for her entire organization. This moment of vulnerability became the foundation for what Jenica calls perfect imperfection, a leadership philosophy that values authenticity over invincibility. She began mentoring others to use their pain as fuel for success, not something to hide or overcome alone. She intentionally built supportive accountability tribes where vulnerability wasn't just accepted, it was expected. The results: decreased burnout, increased innovation, stronger teams, and perhaps most importantly, a redefinition of leadership as a blend of strength and softness rather than relentless self sacrifice. This isn't just Jenica's story. This is the story of what happens when we challenge the narrative that says strength means suffering in silence. But let's be honest, vulnerability is terrifying. It feels like standing naked in a crowded room. It feels like handing someone a map to all your weak spots. It feels like risk, and it is risky, but not nearly as risky as the alternative. Because here's what Jessica Short helped me understand: you do not have to carry your burdens alone. In fact, you were never meant to. This brings me to the second profound insight from my conversation with Jessica: the absolute necessity of building intentional support networks. Consider the case of Black women serving in ministry roles, pastors' wives, and faith leaders who face unique pressures and profound isolation. These women often stand at the intersection of multiple expectations: to be spiritual exemplars, tireless servants, perfect partners, and pillars of strength for entire communities. The stigma around mental health in many religious communities, combined with cultural expectations of strength for Black women, creates what one woman described as a prison of perfection. These women were suffering silently, invisibly, believing that their struggles were somehow a failure of faith or character. But through intentional mentorship networks, through creating safe spaces for honest conversation, through the radical act of saying, I'm not okay, and that's okay, these women began to break free from unrealistic expectations. One minister's wife shared how for 20 years, she never admitted to anyone that she struggled with depression. I thought I had to be strong for everyone else, she said. I thought my weakness would dishonor God and my husband's ministry. When she finally found a community of women who understood her unique challenges, who held space for her grief and her joy, who reminded her that even Jesus wept and asked for help carrying his cross, she described it as coming back to life. These support systems allowed for healing, visibility, and authentic community. They fostered resilience not through endurance, but through connection. They transformed not just individual lives, but entire faith communities. This isn't just about having friends. This is about intentionally cultivating relationships where you can be fully seen, fully known, and fully supported. It's about creating spaces where vulnerability is honored, not punished. It's about recognizing that interdependence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And this brings me to the third and perhaps most powerful insight from my conversation with Jessica Short. Your trials are preparation for greater things. Let me tell you about Rachel Cargill, whose story exemplifies this truth in extraordinary ways. Rachel survived abusive relationships and navigated single motherhood while pursuing higher education. She faced compounded stress and a profound lack of mental health resources. But Rachel didn't just survive these experiences, she transformed them into purpose. She founded the Loveland Foundation, which funds free therapy sessions for Black women and girls impacted by violence and homelessness. Since 2018, the foundation has distributed over $5 million in therapy grants, shifting the narrative of self care from luxury to necessity. Rachel's willingness to share her story publicly challenged the stigma around vulnerability and inspired systemic change. She didn't just overcome her trauma, she used it to create healing pathways for thousands of others. This is what Jessica means when she says, our trials prepare us for greater things, not in some vague, everything happens for a reason way that dismisses real pain, but in the concrete reality that our deepest wounds often become the source of our most profound contributions. Our suffering, when acknowledged and processed in community, can become the foundation for movements that change lives. Our breakdowns, when we're brave enough to share them, can lead to breakthroughs not just for ourselves, but for others walking similar paths. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending pain is pleasant. It's about recognizing that even our darkest moments can be transformed, not erased, but repurposed into something meaningful, something healing, something greater. So, where does this leave us? What do we do with these insights? I challenge you today. Take one deliberate step this week to embrace vulnerability, not as a performance, but as a practice. Ask for help with something you've been struggling with alone. Share a truth you've been hiding. Reach out to someone who might need to know they're not alone in their struggle. Because vulnerability isn't just about emotional honesty, it's a radical act of courage that challenges systems built on the myth of self sufficiency. It's a revolutionary stance against cultures that profit from our isolation. It's a declaration that we deserve to be both strong and soft, both powerful and supported. When Jessica speaks about the soft girl era, she's not talking about a trend or an aesthetic. She's talking about a profound recalibration, spiritual, emotional, and mental, that allows us to drop the superwoman cape and reclaim our authentic selves. She's inviting us to see that softness isn't weakness, it's a radical act of self love. That saying no isn't selfish, it's sacred boundary setting. That asking for help isn't failure, it's wisdom. We stand at a crossroads. We can continue to perpetuate the myth of the lone hero, the strong one who never breaks, never bends, never needs. Or we can pioneer a new way of being, one where our collective strength is measured not by how much we can endure alone, but by how courageously we can connect in our most vulnerable moments. The choice is yours. But remember this: every time you choose vulnerability over isolation, every time you reach for support instead of struggling alone, every time you share your truth instead of your highlight reel, you're not just changing your own life, you're changing the world. Because a world where vulnerability is valued is a world where people can heal. A world where interdependence is celebrated is a world where communities can thrive. A world where softness is recognized as strength is a world where we can all finally breathe. So take that breath, reach out that hand, speak that truth, and watch as the ripples of your courage create waves of transformation far beyond what you can see. Your vulnerability is not your weakness, it is your superpower. Your need for support is not your failure, it is your wisdom. Your trials are not your end, they are your beginning. The world doesn't need more perfect people, it needs more perfectly imperfect people who have the courage to be real. Will you be one of them?